Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffy Kennedy, author of fantasy romance and romantic fantasy. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Ah, had to take an extra sip there. Today is, we haven't done this for a while. Say it with me, Friday! Woo! April 22nd. So it's 4/22/22. And it's a beautiful morning here. Crabapple tree is in glorious bloom. And I'm realizing, however, that I need something on my little arms because we're going to have winds again today. But today and tomorrow should be the last for the big winds, and then we get nice again. Um, but I'm going to go grab a jacket. I shall be right back. There. I put on pink to match the crabapple. But you probably can't see all that well because of the rising sun. And I grabbed my notes because I made notes today. Um, I think I haven't given a writing update in a while. I'm still working on The Storm Princess and The Raven King. I am well past midpoint. I'm closing in on scene 5, and I'm at a little shy of 55,000 words. I I think it's going fine. It's funny because lately several people have asked me how the writing is going, which I guess people must ask me all the time, and I'm just noticing it lately because I actually don't have a good answer to it. I think my head is so caught up with nebula planning and stuff with stuff that I'm actually not. I don't know. I'm not. What is the word I want? People. I want to say kvetching, and that's not right. Um, I'm not all caught up in the book. I'm not having my usual emotional turmoil over writing this book. I feel like I'm circling in the book. I thought that after the break over Easter in Tucson with the family, where I didn't write it all for a few days, that would be a great time to come back and revise from the beginning. And I didn't feel like doing that. I felt like going forward with where I was in the book. I keep wanting to turn the laptop, but I want you guys to see the crab apple. You probably don't care, but you get to see it anyway. Um, yeah, I wanted to keep going, and I feel like, and I do think I've mentioned this before, this is Ryan and Lena's story, and they're kind of caught in something of a vicious circle in their relationship. So I can't tell how much of this is them circling and how much it's me circling, but to some extent, I am oddly sanguine about it. How often do we get to use that word in daily conversation? I have a good plan. I have time to revise, and I realize that I may end up like doing a lot of cutting and streamlining by the time I get to it. Maybe I won't. I often think that I am, and then I don't. So so we shall see. But so far, I'm feeling fine about the book. Maybe that's a bad sign. Coffee tastes good. I am also am on something of a rabbit hole. I don't know if it counts as a rabbit hole if I'm not lost to it, but I started reading something unusual for me, and I do blame Connie Willis. Okay, now I am turning the laptop so I can sit back a little bit here because she, in her great epigraphs, do you call them epigraphs if it's just like a little forwordy thing to her stories in the collection Firewatch? She mentioned the poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning and the courtship between her and her husband, the poet Robert Browning, with stuff that I didn't know. Um, because before this, I think I knew about them that, it's like the result of this education. I don't know, maybe we could scathingly say American public school education, which only gives a glancing overview. Also, my private liberal arts college education, get this shallow overview of everything. Every once in a while, it seems like people, especially the experts, I put that in air quotes, complain about that sort of thing. And I always think, whenever I think of that word, I think of when I was in graduate school and one of my favorite professors had a poster up that said, "Experts don't know more than anybody else. They're just better prepared and have slides." You guys, it is so fucking true. Those are words to live by. So, yeah, the experts. I I think this is a theme with me. I circle back around to things about experts and people knowing stuff and putting a lot of pride in what they know. Anyway, I will admit without hesitation that I had this very uh, shallow understanding of the poets, Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning, which I suspect many of us have. And I can quote the one poem, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." But I did not know a lot about their courtship. I did not know that she was a famous poet before. I knew she'd married later in life. I didn't know that she was 40, that he was 9 years younger, that he fell in love with her poetry and courted her because of that, that she was basically an invalid and a shut in. Fascinating things about her family. So I do get interested in biographies, but this was a little bit of a departure for me because I was reading about this while I was at my folks' house in Tucson and impulsively bought a couple of books, one on Kindle and one on paper, of all things, that are biographies of her. And so I've been reading this book, and I could actually give you the actual title and I can link to it and be responsible. But I'm reading a book called Dared and Done: The Marriage of Elizabeth Barrett and Robert Browning by Julia Marcus. And it's very interesting, and I'm enjoying it a whole bunch. Uh, it really feels like it's feeding an unasked question. You know how the universe sometimes does that? It supplies you stuff that you didn't know you wanted to think about. And there's great stuff in this book that I didn't know I wanted to think about. And there's going to be a lot here. I think this is going to become a book slash series slash new world someday. I try not to tease you guys with secret projects because you complain, and I know you complain with love. But um, yeah, this gave me an idea with a capital I. So, but it's far down the road. Um, I mean, have I caught you guys up on stuff lately? Doesn't matter. After I finish Storm Princess and the Raven King, that ties off the Heirs of Magic series. That'll be done. Then I'm going to write another book in Bonds of Magic series. For all of you wondering if there are more books after Gray Magic, that's what I'm writing once I finish this. Then I have two more books planned to write. One is one that I started that I think I have something like 100 pages on. Let's see how many pages I have on that. Maybe it's not so many. I might be overly optimistic there. Oh, yeah. Well, sorry, I had to sneeze. Might be just the one. No, that's not so bad. I have 87 pages on it, 20, a little shy of 24,000 words. I want to finish writing that book. And then I have another new shiny idea that I promised to write for Agent Sarah in the fall for possible submission. Our other thing is still out on submission. And Sarah wrote me an email the other day, and actually, let me find this because you guys will be interested. I think she won't mind me sharing this, but it's very interesting industry wise. So, we just don't have much going on with that secret project that's been out, since last fall, genre departure. And Sarah says she gave me a few updates. There's really nothing much to say, but she said all submissions are going slow. And to give you some perspective, I'm currently out with 8 different submissions spanning all genres, from historical to sweet contemporary to paranormal rom com. All are going slow. And I think this is more a symptom of publishing at the moment versus your book. People are just hitting bandwidth walls and they need something. I'm sorry. And until they need something or something heats up, it's going slow. But going to be trying to, as my dad would say, kick the tires and light the fires, resubs, and see if we can get some good news. She's very sweet. But, and I am hearing this from more people than Sarah. And it's interesting, even like with nebula planning, we have people just dropping out of doing stuff, just like suddenly hitting overwhelm. I think it's just where we are. Bandwidth is a real thing for people right now. So this feels like a good time for me to be uh, contemplating new things. So a lot of writers talk about, and I hear writers say this all the time, that they won't read anything in their genre while they're writing a particular book, which for me, because I'm always writing, I don't, that wouldn't be possible. Then I would never read in my own genre. But I also think that it's a consideration that's not that important, because, and I know I emphasize this all the time, that people who plagiarize are doing it on purpose. And putting stuff into the stew of your creative mind is, that's just partly how we refill the well. So so I'm reading this stuff about Elizabeth Barrett and kind of storing it away into this stew for this story I want to write. But it's also giving me interesting food for thought. And one of them is that she was, as I said, famous as a poet, um, as an invalid, uh, basically a shut-in. She didn't leave her room for many years, and there's different stuff about like what was wrong with her, but we won't go into all of that. You can go read the book. But this fine, I mean, it's a great love story, right? And it's exactly the kind of thing that I write about and that I love in romance, is that when she fell in love with Robert Browning, that gave her the impetus to take control of her health and to leave her room for the first time in, I think, in something like a decade. And she ended up marrying him and running off, avoiding her tyrannical father, evading, escaping, running off to Italy, and she lived there, married, deliriously happy for 15 years before she died, still too young, around my age. Yeah. And it's the part that the book that I'm getting into now is, and it does, as the title indicates, really focuses on their marriage. The book that I got on paper focuses a whole lot on her early life, but she continued to be a prolific poet and wrote a whole lot about the political events going on in Italy at the time, which is another big lacuna in my public school education, that I really didn't know much about what was going on in the middle 1800s in Italy. Did you? I'm giving you all the inquiring look. Maybe it would be a little much to expect. And actually what this book is saying is that even at the time, very few people in England or America knew about the politics of Italy, and where the the period in Paris when all of the writers were there, really made Parisian politics very familiar to people. Elizabeth Barrett was writing about the politics in Italy, and so was Robert Browning. But people weren't interested. They just so didn't care. And another fascinating thing is that once she was married and had a child, which isn't that cool? I mean, she had a child after she was like 41 or 42. I I I think it's interesting because when I was 36, this gal that I knew, I don't know if I would call her a friend, but we were sort of in the same circle. But she asked me one day, kind of out of the blue, if I had regretted never having children. And I was 36, and I it took me aback, and I said I didn't think I'd never had them yet. And she was flustered and was all like, "Oh, well, I didn't mean it." It's like, well, why do you ask somebody a question like that? For the record, I never tried to have children. I always used birth control. I never woke up one day thinking that I needed to have a baby. I kept thinking I might, like that ticking clock would suddenly go off and I would hear the alarm, and I didn't. But I also acquired two stepchildren when I was 24, and that kind of sucked up all of my what little maternal bandwidth I apparently have. Um, Total aside there. Anyway, after she was married, her poetry got dismissed as being like Robert Browning's wife's. And it sort of depends on the era. And I found this fascinating because the author says that she refers to as criticism changed, as the critical community, and critical in terms of literary criticism, changed up through the 1950s, when they began to understand that a poem could also be and mean something, that her Italian poems about politics were dismissed as being um, cheapened by being about politics instead of being about like higher things. Isn't that interesting? And I know I touched on this the other day, and Lexi Chantal made a lovely reel about it. Thank you, Lexi. Uh, and reacted to it in a blog post on the SFF7 blog about whether or not we try to make our work outlive us, whether we try to make it mean something. And it was fascinating to me, the idea that literary criticism evolves also, which, I mean, I guess I thought I knew this, but it was interesting hearing someone else say it, because you guys hear me talk all the time about objecting to people qualifying stuff as whether or not it's well written, or is it a good book or a bad book. And there's a great meme going around with Stephen King, who personally pisses me off because I don't know why Stephen King decided he got to be on a literary high horse, that he gets to pass judgment on whether or not other people are writing good books. But I do think it's interesting, the idea that how we view creative works changes over time. It makes sense that it does, but I'm mulling this idea now that so much can be just what we see in the moment is very different with historical perspective, right? Uh, and one thing that the author, who is a woman, is talking about is how Elizabeth Barrett was, she calls her, describes her as being diffident and self-effacing. She was a very modest person. Even though she started out being hugely more famous than Robert Browning, she was also a shut-in. She had a very, very small world. And she had many people who came to visit her and a lively correspondence, but she also just did not have a huge ego. And so she would excuse herself saying, uh, you know, I'm only watching this through my window, and, I'm just as a woman. And she used analogies after she married of being a wife and being a mother, because of course she did. This is going back to what I was talking about the other day with the pipes and how that colors the water that comes out of the pipes. What we are doing, who we are at any given time, is going to influence our creative voice. Well, the critics damned her for it, saying that again, that she had made her work less important by using these womanly analogies, and it's like, well, fuck those guys. It's just sort of like I want to say the more things change, the more they stay the same, but I think we're just still living out this same trajectory. So, anyway, those are all the things that I'm thinking about right now. It's a really it's a I call it a rabbit hole because I had not expected it all to be going in this direction, and I'm finding it immensely rewarding. And I suppose this is how we deepen our previously shallow educations, right? One of my favorite professors in college uh, said that the whole point of a college education is to teach you how to continue to learn for the rest of your life. And I think that is that ha- that has served me very well. I absolutely believe that, and this is an example. Right here, I am continuing to learn about uh, the politics of Italy in the mid 1800s. Did you know that they were not a unified nation? I didn't know that. And I learned about Elizabeth Barrett and Robert Browning. Fascinating stuff. Filling that well. It's really fun. All right, I'm going to head out. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I hope you find some delightful rabbit holes of your own. And I will talk to you all on Monday. Take care. Bye bye.